All right, now to help us get started with this thing called the CSS box model, I want to introduce you to an HTML element which is referred to as a div, D-I-V. And div is short for division. In other words, dividing content or dividing an area away from the rest of the content inside your page. And divs are often used in page layout. You can quite literally think of them again as boxes or rectangles, and we can wrap content within a div, and we can create divs inside other divs. Those are called nested divs, by the way. But let me at least get you introduced to this thing called a div, and then we'll start working with some of the CSS box model properties. So all I want to do here with you is I want to take my bulleted list here that we have, these local attractions here in Toronto, and I simply want to drop them inside a div element or wrap them inside a div. So it's actually going to be pretty straightforward. I'm going to flip over to my code. I'm going to go and look for that unordered list. There he is right there inside my code. Now, you might want to give yourself a little bit of space above and also below your bulleted list. That's just fine. Type in open angle bracket, DIV, div, and then close angle bracket. And then I want to close that div element right away as well. And again, code is helping me out here a little bit by closing off that tag. So it's going to be open angle bracket / div close angle bracket. Now I want to wrap the entire unordered list in this div element. So give me a moment. I'm just going to take this closing tag here and cut them and then paste them down below the closing unordered list tag, just like this. So there, what we've done is we've wrapped the entire unordered list within a div. Now what we have is a box inside a box inside a box. Follow me along here. So we have our list items, our 4 list items. Those are all boxes, right? Those are containers. And all of those containers or boxes sit inside the unordered list box, and the unordered list box sits inside the div box or the div container. Now, if I save up my work, Control or Command S, and then flip back over to my browser and refresh, I see a whole lot of nothing happening on my page here. It's a bit of a letdown. So I actually want to be able to see my div. Right now, the div is there. We just can't see it. It's completely clear. It's transparent. Usually what I do, especially when I'm just getting started with my divs, is I throw a background color onto the div just so I can see it inside the browser. So flip back over to my code. And 2 things. I'm going to create a CSS rule to control the div, and I'm also going to throw in a background property into that rule to help me along here. So I'm going to scroll up into my internal style sheet where we have all of our styles happening here. Now, you could create a class. You could even create an HTML selector if you want. You could just go div, but then that means that all of your divs on your page would take on the same properties. That's maybe not a good idea. I'm going to create an ID selector. So in other words, this is going to be a CSS rule that's only applied once on the page. I'm sure you remember that. So throw in your number sign and then throw in a name for your div. Call this bulleted list. No spaces or special characters. And then throw in your curly brackets there. Go background, ; space, and then I'll throw in some kind of a background color preceded again by a number sign here. So I'm going to stick with the same blue that I've been using all the way along here, 3366FF, followed by a semicolon. And then apply this ID selector to the div that you and I just inserted. And we're going to do so in exactly the same fashion that I had shown you way back when I introduced you to ID selectors. Go and find the opening div tag that I want to apply the ID selector to. I'm going to throw into this opening tag ID equals, and then in quotes, the name of the ID selector that I want to use, bulleted list, just like that. Don't forget to close your quote. With all of that done now, I'm going to save my document, flip back over to the browser and refresh, and now I have this blue background, this massive blue rectangle showing up inside my browser. This is the div rectangle, the div box or container, if you will. And now we can actually see it on screen. And as I say, oftentimes when I'm getting started with my divs, I throw in these background colors temporarily just so I can see the div so that I can work with it.